record on this computer. I wonder if I've ever cleaned this camera. Magically cleaner, better looking.
It's up for them to decide, I guess. Or we could decide for each other.
I think you look great. So.
I think you look better every minute.
That's all I've ever wanted to hear, really. So, mission accomplished. Awesome. So we started talking about Game of Thrones and gave each other goosebumps, and we're like, we should totally do a podcast or just talk about our experience around it, and not just our experience with the show itself, but with, you know, being surrounded in social media by other people having reactions to the show. And because I feel like there are like kind of divided into 3 different categories now of reactions, which you can be like, yeah, that was awesome, that was like everything that I wanted. I think I'm actually like a 4th reaction where I'm just like, it's not necessarily exactly what I wanted, but I don't think that that's like the point, and I loved being a part of everything and all of that. Maybe I fit more into the 3rd reaction. So the 2nd reaction is people who are like, what the, like, that was terrible, what did they do? They ruined everything. Like, it was a horrible, horrible thing that they did. And those are like the 2. So people who like absolutely loved it, it was everything they wanted, and people who absolutely hate it. I think there was a petition with like millions of people like asking them to rewrite the list. Yes. I just saw that on a YouTube video.
Wow, that like puts a whole other perspective on like this talk for me. I feel like,
really?
Yeah, because I mean, like, I knew from my perspective, I saw a lot of people being like, it was terrible, the ending, like, you didn't miss anything, and like people comparing it to the Sopranos ending when it just like the screen went black. And I didn't watch the Sopranos, so I don't know about that, but
ending.
Apparently like things just go black and you're left with like being like, or I don't know, that was the perception I got from what people were saying. Anyway, so yeah, just like knowing that there's actually an active petition that's like people have acted upon these emotions of themselves to like bring themselves to.
Well, I mean, it really takes like one person to do it, and then other people like, all you gotta do is sign.
Sure, but signing even.
I feel like I would sign just in case, like, maybe they will do it. Like, I'm not gonna sign it from a place of like, it was terrible, you need to make this better, but from a place of like,
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, like Game of Thrones. Dude, this petition gets big enough, we get more Game of Thrones, maybe. Like, if only it was like every person who signed the petition added like $1 to pay the actors and the writers to do it again. Yeah, maybe that would work. Yeah, but like it makes sense though with the whole undercurrent of what we're talking about here, because that's like a reasonable number for the amount of people who like have those reactions in things. So I did like just watch this really amazing rewrite, like a guy like talking through a rewrite of the last episode on YouTube, or of the entire season. And like, yeah, I think I would have liked that a lot better if it had gone the way that like he did it. But like on one level, George R.R. Martin is always going to be playing that role of like, just fucking with you. Like he does that. I think that, I mean, so I read the Game of Thrones books back when they were just books, and I think like number 4 or something, and once like the people that you care about were like dead or dying or whatever, and like the direwolves are like barely any left, and everybody's just like, I got to a point where I was like, I don't really enjoy this influence in my life. Like I just feel sad, and I'm like mourning and grieving like people in a book, and like I don't enjoy this like aspect of my life, and so I stopped reading them. So I knew, like, I mean, there's going to be spoilers in this. We're just going to, like,
if you haven't seen Game of Thrones yet, like, let's just pause right here.
Go watch it. Or just, I mean, you can be,
if you don't care, but don't come
sometimes
here.
I just don't care. Yeah.
Don't
get upset if there are spoilers. Yeah. So, like, everybody got introduced to, like, the full throttle George R.R. Martin with the Red Wedding. So it's where, like, you have, like, Rob and Catelyn, and they're, like, you know, having the scene, and Rob's girlfriend is pregnant, and they're going to have a baby, and, you know, like, all this amazing stuff, and they go to this wedding, and then they just get slaughtered, and it's just like, sorry, you know. So that's George R.R. Martin. Like, everybody was like, whoa, do I want to keep doing this? And that's when, you know, like, a little bit after that I was like, I now, like, feel really horrible things when I look at this and like think about reading this book. So I cut out reading books then. Like the direwolves are like all dead. Like and they killed Arya's like direwolf right then, and like I just don't want to play anymore. Like or was it Rob's direwolf? Anyway, I'm terrible with details, so I'm sure I'll get lots of comments that are like, that didn't happen, this happened, or it happened at this time, or go for it, I don't care. That is not my superpower, to remember meticulous details. So yeah, there's a big part of George R.R. Martin that's like that, and the whole point of the books, and this was the first time that I'd really experienced something like that, like Samantha brought up when we were talking about it, that there are like other books that will take you from like this person's perspective, and the next chapter is in that person's perspective. So that's how he wrote the book. Like, this chapter is titled Arya, and it's just like, you know, this, like, I literally have goosebumps now. Every time I turn the page and see Arya was the next chapter, I was like, yes, like, it's so much in Daenerys. Like, every time it's their chapter, you get, like, pushed back in their life. And every time you're, like, having to pick up the reins and be like, what's going on in her world again? And did I miss something and all that? And then, like, it ends, and you're like, what's going to happen? And then you're like, Jon, you know, and you're like, like, okay, so we're headed to the wall, you know, like, okay, and he's just pulling you around, but it's like, you know, you're over here with, like, you know, these people feeling this thing, and then, like, all of a sudden you're, like, transplanted into their enemy's body and, like, experiencing life, you know, like, the Lannisters are seen as, like, bad guys, and then all of a sudden you're in Jaime Lannister's experience, and, you know, like, he is a brilliant, brilliant mind, the way that he does those things, and what he has talked about, like, trying to convey and all of that is that everybody is a bad guy, everybody is a good guy, like, depending on your perspective. We all have those, you know, parts of ourselves. Like, I definitely feel like a good guy. If you talk to my ex, like, I am definitely a bad guy in his world. Like, there are aspects that we all, like, live where, and we so often, like, yeah, we so often feel like other people are bad guys, and that's not to say there isn't maliciousness in the world, but everybody is complex, and he really, like, wants to push that, you know, boundary in your mind. And I feel like that was very formative for me reading those books. I was probably in my late teens, early 20s, to have that perspective, like, opened up in me of, like, you can have this, like, political, you know, thing going on. And if you go into someone's experience and see their humanity and their, you know, the things that are pushing and pulling on them, it's very hard to continue to view them as a bad guy. So George R.R. Martin, you know, I think that it's easy on a superficial level to look at an author and be like, oh, like, their job is just to write, like, a good book. And I compare this a lot in my mind to musicians. So you have, like, a musician that you love and a band, and you love their first album and their second album, and it's like your teen years and you just love them and all that. And then, like, at some point, like, it changes and you watch them get all this backlash, and you're either the person that's like, oh, I liked them and they changed, or you're the person that's like, well, like, I love these humans and I love what they do, and I'm glad they're expanding, and I'm glad they're doing what's right for them. And, you know, like, I just am grateful to be receiving, you know, and even if this album, like, didn't feel great to me, like, I'm still grateful that, like, I got to be part of their experience. And, like,
it's like an investment in them as a person and their art, rather than what you're receiving out of them creating something, as if it's, like, you specifically that they are doing this for, which on a level, like, it is for the fans, and I'm sure that lots of artists would agree that they do it for the fans, you know, but the original desire comes from a creative impetus inside of oneself to create something that couldn't necessarily be created by anybody else in that specific way from that specific perspective. So it's like, that's what you become invested in, is, like, seeing the reflection of that in someone else doing that, and being like, I want to do that, and I support you doing that, and, like, I want to do what I want to create. Yeah,
it's funny because it's really hard to identify that way with George R.R. Martin. He's not a character, like, he's a disagreeable person, which I value. I love disagreeable person. So is, like, Gordon Ramsay and Simon Cowell. They're very disagreeable people, but they are brilliant. They're very successful. And, like, you never see, I've been watching, like, a couple of interviews with Billie Eilish, and, like, she is the epitome of somebody who just sits down and is like, oh, I just do me. I just do what I do. Like, Lady Gaga, like, you never see somebody, like, successful that has, like, changed lives sit down and be like, well, thought really hard about what it is that, like, society really wants from me. And then I, like, conformed as hardcore as possible. And I've gotten really good at being like just exactly what they want. Like, I don't know if we just don't interview those people or we just don't like put that out there. I don't think that they like, that's not how you become successful. So like George R.R. Martin is extremely successful because George R.R. Martin doesn't care if you like his book. Like, he's just going to write what is correct inside of him. And I think that's one thing with like J.K. Rowling is hitting a lot of like shitstorm right now because she has that dynamic of she wrote just these characters and like just these feels for things. And now there's a lot of things that she's coming out and like saying and like rewriting in the past and putting in that like weren't there and stuff. And like, she's getting a lot of backlash of people being like, are you like, is this coming from inside of you now? Or is this coming from like what you think that we want to hear? And it's like causing like all of this chaos. But George R.R. Martin would be like, well, somebody would never do that. I feel like it's hard to, like, it's easy to see like the adorable, like gorgeous Billie Eilish sitting there and being like, I just do whatever I want, or Lady Gaga or whatever. But like, you see this like gruff older man and he's just like, I don't care. Like, yeah, like they all needed to die, you know? Like, you don't be like, I want to feel that confident in, like, it's hard to identify with, right? So it's easier to identify with like a musician or, you know, somebody that you see like in pop culture, like Oprah, you know, like any of these interviews that you see, they're like, well, I started out by trying to be things that, and then I realized that I couldn't do that and I had to be other things. I think that makes some people uncomfortable. And I think the biggest thing, so going back to people that either like love it or hate it, and I think what it triggers in people when you hate it, when you take like a band and the band is like doing something that isn't what you wanted anymore, I think that there is a very strong dynamic of people who are living a life where they feel trapped in having to do what is wanted from them. They have to stay in their job and they have to do what that job wants them to do. And they want happy endings to come from it. They want to be able to feed their children. They want to be able to just like have a basic like feeling of like things being good enough and being good. And it makes it very hard to connect with the energy of really like breaking those chains, like leaving the relationship, leaving the job, leaving like those experiences and opening your mind to other things and trusting, like feeling that all come around. It's
like feeling confident and competent in creating your own life. Like,
right.
Because born of that feeling of trappedness and or even resulting from that trappedness results from or borns this feeling and focus of codependency. Like there's a sense of either codependency creates more in your life where you feel trapped because of other people's actions or other people's like creations that they're creating, and you feel like somehow you don't co-create your reality with them, like, or out of this trappedness comes more codependency as far as, so it's like a perpetuating cycle. I feel like it comes before, it comes after, it comes from a lot of different places, but the fact that there's a sense of when you are relying on others to create a life in front of you that you are happy with and respond in this most perfect way to, that there, first of all, it's never going to happen exactly like you want it to in your mind unless you are the one acting upon your own experiences and creating from a sense of feeling grounded and worthy and, like your creations are valuable. And like, you don't have to micromanage and control everyone else's creations, that they can just like be creating and you can be creating. And if you're not creating in the same vein, you're like, you drift away from that. And like, same as with things when you do still love what someone's creating, but maybe it's not for you, but that doesn't mean that you can't come back together at another point and be sort of parallel in another dimension. Like I think the underlying sense that I'm trying to get at is there's a codependent nature to having the sort of reaction that has you have such a strong response of rejection of what someone else is creating, especially when it is just simple creation and it is not necessarily something that is like ruining lives of people, like,
right?
like if it's just an art piece or if it's just a writing piece
Right.
or
So
whatever.
Codependency is also like, externalizing control of your experience and your emotions. So however Game of Thrones ends, like, I can understand, like, oh, this made me feel like certain ways, and that's my experience. It comes from my experience in life. It comes from all sorts of other things, and it has nothing to do with what George R. R. Martin and the writers, like, did with this storyline, what those characters did, like what happened to those characters. That is external from me, and I am the only one who can change how I feel, who can take what I feel and say, like, wow, like that particular death like triggered this thing in me and it's making me feel really terrible. I'm not going to say like they should not be writing that. I'm going to say, wow, like what is the deep thing in me that's like, it's like if you go to rub your leg and you're like, oh shit, like what was that? Like, is it a sunburn? Is there an infection? Is there like all of a sudden a zit on your leg? Like what is it? Mosquito bite, a spider bite, like what is it? What is it in there? Not like, damn hand, like don't fuck with my leg like that. It's like, no, like there's something in there. And so there's also like the third reaction, which is, because I just watched like the remake of the Game of Thrones. If you listen to a band and like you love their music and then they come out with a song and you're like, or an album and you're like, I mean, some of this, like, I love that they've culminated here, but like, I just feel like it would be better if they had done this in like this kind of tone. And like, it's not like, what the hell are they thinking? You're like, wow, like they went this way, but like, I'm feeling this urge to go this way. And then you make like covers of every song in that album, the way that you think, and you create on top of what they've created, like this beautiful extra creation and stuff, which is what that, like, I just said, like, I loved this way that season 8 went in this guy's rewrite, but like, it doesn't have to come from a place of like, they did this horrible thing to you by not writing it the way that you wanted. And if it inspires you to write something that you like, and then, I mean, like, he's got a YouTube video that's like got tons and tons and tons of views. And I should like put the link in here because I cannot remember.
Yeah, we will.
No idea who he was. But it was it was a masterful rewrite, and it brought in so many dynamics of like the, Arya's like face stuff and, Bran's like, Warg, what was it called? Warg. Yeah. I was like, M-O. Like all of these different dynamics that like, okay, like I do feel that those were like beautiful. Like it's the magic that George R. R. Martin weaves, that he didn't write this yet, So he told them like that these are the places that we were heading, and you do all the rest. So try to fill in someone else's magic, like that's I mean, how do you take on like, what else should Arya do that no one would ever expect with this like ability to, master death and faces? And
I honestly loved the way the Game of Thrones ended. Like I said before when we were talking, I thought it was brilliant that they put the Battle of Winterfell in the like third episode or whatever, so that there were still episodes afterwards where like other things were filling themselves in. I thought that was absolutely necessary. I thought that there were like beautiful culminations to people's stories and threads together. Like Jon could have been the only one I thought could have killed Daenerys. Like there was, and she had to die. Like I felt it as we were moving up to that point. Yeah, so that was my feeling.
That's like a George R. R. Martin thing. Like,
and I appreciate that about his writing, because I think that the thing that's great about that is that he has this style of pulling you into people's things, and like. And that's when you know that they're gonna die and that everything that you love is impermanent.
Yeah, right.
That's where I go. Like,
but it's also like that kind of concept of like, when you have politics that's literally how do we kill each other, and you're like mastering the I'm the best killer, and that's like the whole point of the whole underlying thing of their society, right? You had like the Mad King, and like the only thing you could do with him was somebody to come in and kill him. He was the best at killing everybody, like willy-nilly. Like when you just play with death so casually, death plays back, and so like those dynamics I feel like had to be in there. That was something that was like missing from that. The rewrite that I just saw was more like, this is what we all want to like feel, at the end, and then like like this like, okay, well this hurts a little bit, but like it makes me feel good, and all that, like but when you really like You're Daenerys, and I love the memes where it shows like Daenerys in the very beginning being like, I'm gonna burn down King's Landing, I am gonna do all these horrific things, like I'm gonna take it with fire and blood and all that, and then like everybody was like shocked when like she goes and like burns the whole place down. Yeah, like she literally said that's what her entire point of her life, like, and she did it, and she was done, you know, like done, the end of Daenerys, like she did it, and yeah, I feel like those elements had to be there. And I mean, I'm sure that those are aspects that George R. R. Martin like wrote in it. I don't have proof of that, but I feel like he told the writers, you know, like, this is my projection, don't like quote me on this, but yeah, he must have told the writers,
no
like,
affiliation.
This is how Daenerys finishes her story. You know, she needs to be killed. Like, and I feel like I remember the writers in season 7 when Daenerys and Jon started to be romantic. I feel like I remember them saying like, yeah, we just, you know, when we saw them together, it just was inevitable. So I feel like Daenerys and Jon together was from the writers, not from George R. R.
As Daenerys started losing all of her other friends, and you could see that she only had, and it was very like taut string of like faith that she had in Jon too. Like it was not like It was tense, but she was still, that was the only person in the entire world that she had at all any kind of connection of trust.
She would have only, and that's
anymore.
One thing that
besides her general, I guess.
Mormont?
No, he's
the Grey Worm. Yeah. Well, that was after they killed Melisandre, which was
right. That's what I'm saying. Like the only, I feel, her only thread in the world was, you know, to Jon, and she, like, even though she barely trusted him, she still, that was like a little weakness there. She, like,
I feel like that also, I love that romance, because to me, the most significant thing about like romance, like the right kind of romance, like a spiritual partnership, somebody that's going to grow and you're going to grow, is not like, what can you provide? Are you attractive? Am I attracted to you? Like, can we make this work? Those kinds of, but it's literally being like, I am living my life at my highest good, and like, I recognize that in you, and like, if you see me in my highest good,
I'm like squirming right now. When Jon like was confronted with Daenerys being like she was just like controlling and manipulative of him, and he would just like, okay, well, like, still consciously he was like, she's my queen, you know?
Yeah.
But like unconsciously, I felt like all of the iterations of my past relationships where I was like, this is a red flag in front of me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be like, okay, but like, I guess we're trying to make this work right now. Like,
I may have to murder you at the end of this.
Like, basically.
But for now, okay, yeah, no, I mean, I did say that
there's like this underlying thing going on, you know, where he's just like, I am struggling with this, but like, I guess I'm gonna just put my thing aside right now and act as though, you know, society would call that pride, and it would be, you know, treason.
Well, that's like, I mean, that's why they don't want you to like date your superiors, right? Like your boss, you know, like, well, first and foremost, you're my boss, so this is a difficult dynamic here. I guess, yeah, I'll just have to, it makes everything more complicated. Boss is different.
Take your job, or
yeah, right. You're supposed to be loyal to me, so even though we're supposed to be romantic.
Yeah, here. I don't know. It was like, there were so many aspects of that. The way that it was ended, you know, as the official seasons, that felt like very personal for me. I felt like, I mean, especially also because we love Arya, like, I don't know if you don't love Arya, like, I don't know what show you were watching, but ow, I know, but yeah, like, as we were watching Arya, and I loved seeing the writers talk about putting her on the ground in like the firefight, and when Daenerys was up in this, I was like, Jon, if he sees that Arya went through like literally escaping death like by an inch at the hands of his queen, like, I was just like, how could she was just a character you love so much, so you're just so invested in her making it out of the city, and you know she has to. I mean, I don't think even then I had any inkling that Arya would die, but I just think that there's this sense of like really being invested in a character's like creative purpose and like in the world. And when Daenerys got too far off of like seeing herself as this monarch or this ruler and this good guy, like you said. And then as we're watching her, even from her perspective, you can see this like sort of separation from where one is in their own heart while watching, you know, like knowing that like if she's gonna burn an entire city, and maybe you didn't feel that way, maybe you felt like she was absolutely like valid and she should not have died, and like there's something under there too, like you're identifying with something in her that you're seeing, or you're disidentifying, which was what I felt in this last season. Like they were trying to pull us away from Daenerys so that in order for us to understand she had to die. Like, yeah, you know, there was like, that's the beauty of the way that they're writing this.
Well, yeah, I mean, and not just for us to understand, but because if they're going to kill her and they're going to have Jon kill her, we have to see that he is very, like, he was convinced. Yeah, and like that conversation that he had with Tyrion, I was like, because they're not saying it, right? They're like being all like political about it.
What has to happen?
Has
you
to
know
happen.
What has to happen.
You know what has to happen, and you're like, oh, he's saying no. Yeah, no.
Does he know what he's saying? If I was standing there, I'd be like, you just have to tell me what you're talking about.
Yeah, I feel like maybe Jon should kill him for saying that. Like, that's his queen. But Jon's pretty respectful. Like, Jon listens to people's, like, dissenting thoughts and doesn't just murder them. So maybe that's why he, you know, like, all of these different dynamics.
He should be king.
Yeah, and then he sees Tyrion afterwards and he's like, he says, like, I had to do it, or what I did, or something, and Tyrion's like, what we did. And I love that, like, coming together.
Yeah, I did too. But also, once Jon kills her, you know he can't be king. Like, there's no way that he would even approach that and be like, okay, yeah, now I'm gonna be king, like, and I'm okay with that. Like, there's no way.
That's
for him morally.
Yeah, for him morally, right. I found it interesting though that, because, I mean, it is kind of the dynamic of kings that, like, if somebody kills you, that's how they become king.
But it's not the dynamic of Jon.
Exactly,
like,
yeah. But I feel like the way that it ended was with everybody being like, oh, he's locked up, we're keeping him locked up, and we're making decisions, instead of Jon being, like, standing there with Tyrion or whatever and being like, I'm just out. Like, just.
I loved that Grey Worm, like, did not allow him to, like, be in that conversation at all, because how could, like, it would have been weird to me if he just brought him up there and was like, yeah, speak your piece, you just killed my queen, like, who I'm still grieving my girlfriend, and I don't know if he called her his girlfriend.
Yeah.
I mean, he went to Narth afterwards, so.
Right.
And I say Narth in, like, this most terrible accent. It's, like, sounds bad when I say it, but, you know, I imagine it to be a very beautiful and, like, nostalgic place for him. But, okay, so, yeah, it's just, there is an interesting thing going on with, like, the way that you perceive something outside of yourself, in this instance, Game of Thrones, and the way that things are going on within you that, like, are dying to be triggered, so that you can be triggered, so that you can recognize them and then address them.
You're going to keep feeling that over and over and over again until you figure it out.
And it's not just about Game of Thrones. You're going to feel it with your mother.
Yeah.
You're going to feel it with your kids. You're going to feel it with your neighbor. You're going to feel it with the fucking mailman when your dog bites in the ass and he comes back at you and you're like,
it's always an opportunity, though. I mean, and that's kind of like two different ways of viewing the world. Like, are you viewing the world as like, I'm being my authentic self, something is going to come in the way, I'm going to have difficult feelings, that's an opportunity for me to, like, go, wow, I felt this like every week of my life since I was a child. When was I a child that I first felt this? And then figuring out where it comes from and, like, rooting it out and healing that child, like, with yourself. You heal that child, and then you don't have to keep feeling that for the rest of your life. The next time that it starts to come up, it's like, oh wow, this is how I felt then, and I do feel much better, and it loops and it closes. Or you can
not completely, and not just all at once. And, like, if it comes up again, that doesn't mean you did it wrong.
Yeah, there are different aspects of it. Like, you can feel shame and grief and, you know, have, like, all different aspects. Different things can trigger you back. Like, the worst experience that I had was an entire week long, and it was so friggin' complex that I go back there. Like, new things have brought me back there, like, once every month or 2 months now that I'm aware of it and I'm, like, working through it, and like massive changes in my life. I don't feel that way anymore, like, not as much as I did, and I can feel it, like, unraveling and the pattern, because you, like, literally your brain has a physical place for electricity to flow, and it needs to physically, it's called plastic, it changes and it will rewire and change the way that it orients itself, and it orients those memories, and it's a physical process. It also comes with depression. because it powers things down, like construction going on in there. And then when it boots back up, you're, you know, doing better, and you have like new pathways, and old pathways have been broken down. And
I read an article once about how depression was your brain's and body's way of protecting you, because when you're not getting the return on your life that is necessary for you to be like functioning optimally, then your brain like shuts down some of those receptors so that you can, you know, like be in sort of like a energy saver mode.
Yeah, definitely.
And then as you act upon that feeling in order to replenish yourself with energy and refocus yourself on what your desires and what things you can do to create more energy for yourself, that's how you kind of reboot back up into, you know, your full potential and your potential to create this life that you don't have to be dependent on anyone else's capacity to create life for you, and to have this experience. But I also wanted to mention that I think you may have talked about your traumatic experience in like 75% of the videos that we've done so far. I don't know if you talked about it in all of your other conversations. And I only say that to say that that is significant in how you bringing it up so often as it comes into your mind, and being able to process moment by moment and time after time. All of that accumulates to more and quicker healing of these. So it's not like she thought about it once, she talked to her therapist, she has to just get over it, or like, you know, this thing that stays with her, like, why is it still with her? Like, she, like, every time it comes up again, it's welcomed as a part of the conversation that brings back a piece of you to yourself, like, or the piece that you've just put back, or a big piece that feels like you're revalidating it being there, rather, because you have to revalidate those pieces because they haven't been there.
But
so
you also have to like surround yourself with people who can handle that, because like I've had conversations when things are coming up before. I had like surrounded myself with Samantha and Monica, and like my mom had, you know, was at the same place that I am, and like other people. And I remember like sitting across the kitchen table from somebody and like talking about like, this is kind of a thing that's happening. This is a thing that I'm starting to realize. And I could see her body just like lock up. I could see her eyes like look. I could see her just like get antsy. She could not. And what, like the reason why those things happen is because she's holding in, like, I did not know this happened to me. I didn't know this happened to me until I was 32, 33. And okay, so in my mid-20s, I had a like doctor that I trust, like an allopathic, like super brilliant doctor say, like, that's an interesting story. Yeah, you sound like you had a really hard time as a teenager. But that's PTSD. Do you have sexual abuse in your past? And I was like, no. I mean, I've many times thought about it, and it's come up in my mind. Like, of course, you know, we all wonder. But no, definitely, like, I don't have any memories and all of that. And like, but it stuck in my mind. Like, he looked at me and was like, those are PTSD symptoms. Like, you know, a boy that I really liked coming close to me, and I'd black out and like be on the other side of the room. And like, you know, a boy that I liked, and we'd all go to the beach with like the church group, and he was my boyfriend. He would come over to me, but he was shirtless, and he would come near me, and I would just like, I could feel it in my body. Like, I just completely panic, and I would be mean to him, and he would be like, okay, and he'd go off with his friends, and then I would be turning to my friends. I'd be like, why won't he hang out with me? And he would come back. His friends would bring him back because I wanted to hang out with him, and I would be mean to him, and he would, and like when my doctor, like I told him, because I was telling him like, I've had these problems, you know, you should have seen me as a teenager. I was really bad. And he was like, that's PTSD. And when after he told me that, it stuck in my mind. And I was like, from what? You know, like, I mean, everybody has like a, you know, like our parents aren't perfect, and you know, but like, what the hell happened to me?
Yeah. So as you're opening up, you have to have someone who can receive that, or else it's triggering within you. It's transferring something onto you. Their trigger is like, you receive that information like, oh, this isn't okay to share.
And I'm sure I had like subconscious reactions. Like if somebody in my like early 20s, if somebody was talking about sexual abuse or whatever, I'm sure that I was like, man, I'm hungry, you know, like because that is the cognitive dissonance that your brain uses to protect yourself. And like, that is perfectly fine. There's a point at which you will subconsciously like know that it's okay to let things like start to bubble up, and you know that it's a true thing when you feel it in your body. When it's not just like maybe this horrible thing happened and maybe this person did this thing to me. Like, did that happen? Should I ask that person? If you're not like physically feeling it in your body, then probably not, you know, like, I mean, maybe, but probably not. And that's like the parameter for whether something like actually did happen to you or not. And you do have to like gauge, because it's so easy to feel shame. Because I mean, if I'm talking to Samantha and I bring up just like casually in this conversation, right, and I see her visibly recoil from me, the only reaction, if I'm like unconsciously processing that and I don't know, like, oh, like I can see her shutting down, there's something in her it's triggering that she's not ready to approach. Like, if I don't have that awareness, then all my brain can process is I did something wrong.
Yeah.
And I should be ashamed that this thing happened to me, that, you know, like, so you take on all of this shame and it it continues to like shut you down and make you pull back. And I mean, that's part of what she and I foster is this, you know, like, I mean, we will talk about it openly. If you watch our conversations, you watch these videos and you listen to us talk about, you know, traumatic things that happened in our past, and your only reaction is like, why would they talk about that stuff? I don't want to talk about it. Then like, you shouldn't be in our intimate groups, because there has to be a place to talk about those things. And we are that place. And we have, you know, like other places, and you could be in our personal, like there are definitely places where we will warn you before we say things, but in our content and what we make in our business is a welcome place. And it is a place where you like, it is a place where people take responsibility for their own experiences. So if I'm reading something or whatever, and like I see something and it's triggering, I know that that's me, and that's not like something that somebody has to like do. Of course, in our big public group, the Motherhood Becomes Hers group, where there's 1,100 people, if there are certain things that I'm finding triggering or she finds triggering, then we do ask people to put a content warning, or we ask people like, this is probably not an appropriate place to share those things.
That someone else might find it triggering.
Right. That's what I mean.
Our
like
context of, or our perception of what we see the group being about.
Right. So there was like a particular experience where memes were being shared that were triggering me, because it was like just very hardcore sexual nature jokes, and it was like every single week there were like 4 or 5 of them. So while I'm scrolling and like liking everything and reacting to everything, laughing at everything, I didn't like that feeling. I wouldn't have done anything based on just me not liking that feeling, but acknowledging that other women in this 1,100 group of 1,100 women who are just sitting there with their children, laughing at funny memes because maybe they're having a hard day, and then also seeing these things and also being like, that's like, being triggered, because that's, to me, I get particularly triggered if I'm in like a home, like peaceful environment where I don't have my guard up at all, and then sexuality is coming at me like without my consent. And so that's something that I also try to like safeguard other women from. I feel it's different if I like am saying like a tragic, and I never say like the hardcore stuff
and
of
that's
those
like,
details.
It's not like repression or anything at that point, or oppression of something outside of yourself. It's like that compartmentalization is necessary. Not to say that like, okay, so the thought that came up for me just then was that like, okay, well, if you're reacting to this outside of yourself, then it means something about you and you need to do this inner work. Like, that's not what we're saying. Is not that you can't have proper, appropriate boundaries around your life because of these triggers. You shouldn't just ignore them and like criticize them for being triggers, and then like, because I can see that cycle in my own mind having the potential to happen, as far as like, oh, I'm triggered outside of myself. Well, looks like I just need to look inside of myself. This is not their problem. This is my problem. That's all true, but there's a certain amount that you have to interact with your life, and so you set those boundaries in order to create this container for yourself, this structure that you live in that feels safe and comfortable, while you can continue to do that work and open up the capacity to, just understand yourself in the world and what you're bringing out, what you're creating, and what kind of container that needs. And so it
also isn't wrong at all if you aren't comfortable watching our conversations, because like the details of what happened to me, and every time I refer to it, it triggers you. Like, that is perfectly acceptable to create those boundaries in yourself, because you can't just expect to be in those situations where you have, like, maybe you just got the baby down and you've only got an hour to yourself, and you know what I mean? And the last thing that you want is to be like triggering that stuff when you don't know what to do with it, and you're not adept at doing that, and you don't have like Samantha and I like on, you know, like Insta dial to like, you know, say like, I was watching your video and like this came up and I'm having a panic attack and I'm not sure like, how can I like not have this reaction? How can we work through this? Like, the content that I put out every week in the Continuum group is like helping people, like work through that, connect these dots, like build these structures and these foundations of how to see yourself, how to see like the influx of what happens to you, how to see yourself like through all of that, and how to build up like the tools inside of yourself, and just like the foundation of how to create tools, how to tap into the guidance within you that's going to tell you like what is an appropriate way to handle this for you, not like I have plenty of suggestions, but the most
brain
important
though
thing
is the idea is that you are responsible for co-creating with your brain, with your own brain and your own perception, the new pathways and the new ways for it to be changed. Like you are the only person who has the full capability of interacting with molding that to what you know that you desire to be in your life and create in your life, rather than having this thought that, you know, everything outside of you just is put upon you. Well, actually, there's this sense of, and I was reading Sabrina Monarch's astrology weekly forecast this morning again, and one of her thoughts for this week between the 22nd through the 25th was that we have this emotional responsibility to, it's not our fault if an invasive thought comes in, but we have the capacity to choose what we focus on and allow something to come up and say, okay, I don't want to give my energy to that thought. Like I'm going to choose another thought, and like gratitude practices and like all kinds of different tools are ways in which we can, just having an awareness of that is not enough. You have to have the tools to like replace those parts with. Otherwise, you're just going to be in this cycle of, like I said earlier, being like, oh, this is wrong. This is what's wrong with me. I keep being triggered and I'm not doing anything about it. And like, or I don't know what to do about it because I don't have a tool to fill that space with.
And the thing is that the universe is going to keep putting that in your path, keep putting in your path to give you opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to figure it out, because what happened is at some point, something happened to disrupt your flow and you fractioned off a part of yourself. And that part of yourself, you're over here, and that part of yourself is still there waiting for something to be able to close that gap and reintegrate back into the whole of who you are and travel up with you. And a lot of times, like that'll be like something happened when I was 4, and then there are parts of my development and parts of like who I am as a person that didn't, like after that trauma, my first trauma when I was 4, after that trauma came out, I started wearing these, like, I went from wearing like pretty much all like black clothes and like I hated dresses my entire life. But suddenly I was wearing, like every time I went to a thrift store, I would find a new solid color dress that just was like a cute, like different kind of like top and flowy. And I wore dresses and leggings like every single day for like a few months. And at the end of it, I was like, that was like my little like inner little girl, because I rebelled a bit against being a girl because of the attention that it brought me. And like after I like figured that out, all of a sudden we just turned green. All of a sudden, like I was, you know, dressing, you know, in an adult way like a little girl. So there's different aspects like that, like parts of you got left behind and need to be reintegrated. And that part of you is going to keep being there, keep feeling that feeling, keep having that reaction until you go back for her and until you bring her forward with you. And that just comes from like sitting down with her and saying like, I'm here now and I've got you covered. And like, what is it that this person needs to hear?
Just to bring it back around, like, and in closing, I think that that's why we are so attracted to the hero's journey stories and this archetypal journey that we are able to go on through sagas like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and Game of Thrones, because you see a piece of yourself in every one of these people and it brings that up in you. And that's like, you have so many of those opportunities as you're amidst these threads of their realities and their life, and you can see yourself or these pieces of you that just really resonate with their journey or what they're doing. And like, if you left Jaime Lannister, like, then there's some part of you that, you know, you related to him. And if you loved Tyrion, like maybe you were bullied or something, you know what I mean? Like there's there are these aspects that you relate to within these other characters and in all of these different shows and films. And because that was something that I thought about was like, well, you know, why should I be like spending my time watching TV? Like, what do I get out of this? Well, really, stories are the way that we relate our own story. Stories are powerful. Storytelling is like spell casting, like being able to, it's another way of creating your reality by seeing yourself in something else and being able to integrate a piece of yourself and then create your life based upon what that has brought you, like a new awareness of yourself.
I think we wanted to like make, like specifically share this conversation and not just like have it in the privacy of our own homes and keep it to ourselves. Because I think that just like examining your reaction to how you feel about what happened to the characters,
about Game of Thrones, about everything.
Yeah, but this in particular, I like, you know, one of the titles that I don't know which title we're going to use, but one of them was like, why do I feel like this when other people feel like that about this, you know, the way that it all ended? Like, I feel really strongly this way. Look at all these people who feel really strongly that way. And like, it does, you know, like sometimes we ask those questions rhetorically of like, you know, why do you even watch shows or, you know, whatever, like, why do you watch shows? You know, why do you feel this way when other people feel that way? And the answer is because there are some people who are externalizing control of their experience and control of their emotions, and that might be you. You might be really friggin' upset that you watched all this and that's how it ended, and like, how dare these people do that to you? And like, if that's how you're experiencing it, then you have the opportunity to take this experience and to look at that you are constantly externalizing control of your emotions. Because I will bet a lot of money that this is not the only place that you do that. Your partner, your children, your mother, your like
and it
everyone.
doesn't make you wrong. It makes you human.
It gives you the opportunity to become aware and to start to change the way that you're doing that, because I promise you, like, everything that you're looking for is something inside of yourself that you're looking for out there. And as soon as you start to find that, start to like develop that skill, and you start to do that, your life is going to like completely turn around. The way that you feel about life, the way that you feel in life, etc. It's all going to completely turn around. And we wanted to like ride the momentum.
That's the new title. How to Change Your Life Based on How You Feel About Game of Thrones.
We wanted to take that momentum, how you feel so strongly. You see memes every day. You see like, you know, like you can watch rewritings and all of this stuff. Maybe you sign the petition. Like, make them rewrite it. Make them fix this for me. I hate the way they did this to me.
Maybe you are George R.R. Martin watching our video. Or Tim Harrington.
Yeah.
And his wife, Rose.
Yes. That's amazing.
I know, I'm sorry. I've been doing too much Game of Thrones research now.
Yes. So we wanted to give you that opportunity and share that with you and say, like, every discomfort, everything that you're feeling, if you're uncomfortable with the way that this, like, that is a great opportunity to change some things. And like, we can totally help you. We have the Motherhood Becomes Hers group. It's just literally like be in a group on Facebook, and they're like-minded women who are like always talking about, you know, motherhood things and taking control of their life in their own way. And it's just
another
similar-minded women.
Yeah, the support is one of those things that you have to fill the gap of the non-support, the void, you know, the void.
Some place that you can actually be authentically yourself and talk about the way that you feel and talk about things that have happened to you and be completely received.
And reflective.
Yeah, people holding space, validating how you're feeling, experiencing things like
watching other people be vulnerable and seeing like, oh my God, like, I didn't go through necessarily that exact thing, but wow, I've had those feelings, and like, wow, it's like really good to see someone saying that out loud, and like, wow, like, let's help them.
And we have the Continuum group, which is right now it's pretty small. We've got like 5 or 6 team members, which is so nice and intimate. But really also am excited about having more people, because every single person brings like a whole new dynamic. It's like watching Game of Thrones, and you identify with every single person in some way. The more people that are there showing up, we've got lessons every week, and people are like posting their answers, asking questions, all that, and then we do a call like every Sunday. And in that we talk to each person as long as we can until it gets too big. And we do
terrible restructuring that a little bit. Yeah. As things grow, we can't give each person as individualized attention, but that's like what's beautiful about the evolution is that we're going through, I mean, hurt people, but helped people help people. So as we continue to grow, more people continue to support each other, which is like
forming friendships and
and as we continue to share
awesome
our
place to make like your first best friend. That's like a spiritual partner.
Yeah, and honestly, like I think that we give that's what we're trying to shine out into the world, is like, this is possible. Like, this isn't always perfect either. And it's still possible to like be continuing to grow and create yourself in a space that you're received and supported, and like nothing that you can really say like is going to shake up your environment too much to the point where you're feeling unsupported and left out. Like, there's too many people behind you that like, as far as a support group, that are there for you, or want to reflect back to you how you can be in your power, like in this life. So,
and that's the paid group, and the price is monthly subscription, and you pay what you can. So if you can only master $5 this month, if you need to set it at $5 a month, our suggestion is $33 a month. That's the price that we had before we changed it to pay what you can. And
if you can pay more and fund like scholarship opportunity for like
for other people,
like as you, and you know, if you can't, we still want you. We still want you, because really what needs to happen is that the world needs to be able to have more people who have more awareness of themselves, who can help more people who.
That's actually something that I was thinking about, because I saw a video by Adam Robarge talking about specifically like, how do I help a client? Like,
link him to now.
Yes.
We're gonna end this video before
all these videos, where he's talking about like exactly how he brings somebody through in a therapy session, what exactly he says, where it usually goes, and all of this, and like. I was realizing like I want to make a video like that, because and I want to say in that video, like literally if you like, if this resonates with you and you're like, this is what I should be doing with like this friend and this like, please do. I don't want to own this. I want to help as many people as possible, and I want those people to help as many people as possible, and like just pass it on. Like, let's
also contact us. Like, let's like see if we can work together. I feel like there's things that, or at least conversations that can happen that can spur and spark like inspiration in all kinds of areas.
We're doing like calls all the time, where we would love to do calls where we talk together to people and record them like this, with like you also, like a Zoom call. And I do one-on-one calls. She does like tarot readings and stuff. We record them, and we're also going to be putting them on this podcast channel. So yeah, I mean, reach out. We absolutely love it. Like, just please reach out and talk to us. We manage our own time and availability and all that. So if it's 5 a.m. or 1 a.m. or whatever, we will answer you as soon as we're awake. And but don't worry about bothering us. So yes.
So Game of Thrones. How did you feel? And what did you learn in this video about how you felt? Comment below.
Yeah, also feel free to fill out the comments with just your own rewrite of the endings.
Let's hear it, please.
Like, more Game of Thrones, please. We should just get into like fan fiction.
We're gonna have a series, Game of Thrones. No, we're not. Maybe.
This is probably our only Game of Thrones.
But subscribe anyway, so that you know what we do. Okay, now
like, subscribe, share.
Ellie's made her own YouTube videos, and at the end of every one, we haven't posted any on YouTube, but at the end of every one, she's always like, give it a big thumbs up and like and subscribe, and
they're so much better at that, because they watch the videos that are viral because they consistently do that and ask. Okay. Bye.